The hiring committee of this room has many critical concerns about the current conditions in our state. We're looking for a person who is best qualified to represent us in Washington. We have 5 questions. We'll ask you to keep it short. You'll have 2 minutes per question to kind of convey your questions. You'll have a timekeeper and you get a 15-second warning before your 2 minutes is up. The first question, there is a continuous talk about the needs to cut our federal spending. New Mexico receives a disproportionate high amount of federal funds due to the bases in our labs. Where would you cut federal spending and why?
That's a great question. I actually don't think the answer is to cut federal spending in the state of New Mexico. I think the idea is to lower its percentage by increasing the economic pie. And I think that pie needs to be increased through more favorable business environment for private businesses and entities. I myself am an entrepreneur. I've owned my own company for over 20 years. And, in fact, I think we just read that our governor has loosened the occupational licensing rules in the state of New Mexico. Things like that are critical to our prosperity. We're also in an exceptional economic climate right now, largely as a result of the recent tax cuts. And this is absolutely something that we need to take advantage of. So, the federal spending that you refer to largely is the bases as well as the labs, all critical. New Mexico is a perfect place for military bases. It's dry, we've got plenty of land, and we also have the most restricted airspace in the U.S. So, why not continue with that? And our labs are doing exceptional work, but not only are they, receiving federal funds, they're also channeling their energies into private development as well. Sandia has its entrepreneurship program where they encourage their employees to come up with private application. A recent Los Alamos lab scientist whose former Los Alamos lab just received $6 million in venture capital for his new product, which is a toxic-free water repellent. Things like that are critical. We just need to continue and more of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Healthcare costs have increased up to 110% over the last 10 years. This is a 2-part question, so we'll try and keep it to a minute each. But what type of plan do you favor? Single payer, Medicare for all, open market, self-insured, or something else? What is your plan on a healthcare benefit?
Whenever you ask the government to fix a problem, it only does a little portion of it, expands the problem, and does it very inefficiently. I think we need to start segueing into more private industry when it comes to medicine. First of all, a direct payer primary care model, which a lot of private physicians around the country are already embracing. Those of us who are going to pay and can afford to pay in cash can do so for day-to-day items. And for major medical, we should have insurance, but insurance has to be available across state lines. The government has done, and the industry has done an amazing job at making things complicated and at restricting the public's ability to access health care. And another major way they've done that is by restricting transparency. I mean, does anybody in this room really knows what it costs for knee surgery? Or can anyone with confidence say what a prescription would cost with or without insurance, or a variety of things like that? We need to have transparency so that as consumers, we can make an educated choice into where we get our products and services. And when we start doing that nationally, then we're going to see an improvement in quality healthcare outcomes and then a decrease in spending. And in terms of Medicare and Medicaid, they absolutely need to be able to have competitive pricing on pharmaceutical products. I mean, pharmaceuticals are one of the major expenses. The FDA has to expedite approvals of non-brand medications. When we can start doing things like that are currently restricted, we will lower the prices.
On the second part of it, what would you do to ensure all New Mexicans can obtain good health care insurance at a reasonable cost? You have about a minute left.
Got it. So, the citizens that are already eligible for Medicare will have, continue to have access to that. And, I certainly believe in access to affordable health care. If Medicaid is appropriate based on someone's circumstances, that's fine. But with any program, my absolute belief and approach is that, we should have, as compassionate people, a safety net. But when it turns into a safety cage, when people can't get out of a system, that's when it's a problem. So those that can afford to pay should pay, even if it's a small amount, even if it's a $5 copay. That's important, because free is never free, and when you don't have to put something forward, you don't appreciate what you're getting.
Next question. Every few years, Congress has discussions about our base realignment and the closures, BRAC, as we know. New Mexico has 4 military bases, which receives federal funds, employs many civilians, and contributes to our economy. If you're serving and BRAC becomes a discussion, what would be your position in regards to New Mexico and our military bases?
Well, I've already answered that in terms of how we approach the bases. I think we are uniquely situated because of our landmass and our climate to, maintain our military bases, and if and when appropriate, to increase them. This is not a reflection, in my opinion, though, on the overall military budget nationally. I mean, while I'm in favor of the tax cuts that we've received, I'm not in favor of it having been done with deficit spending. And while we took that deficit spending, we also increased the overall military budget, I believe, by 8%. So what's happening, for the whole country, I think is different than what would happen and what I would advocate for here with New Mexico. We should maintain what we have.
Thank you. Immigration significantly impacts our state and our country. What is your number one priority on immigration, and how do you plan to ensure this happens?
So we absolutely need, my father was an immigrant. We need immigration, and first and foremost, as you know, I want to increase the economic pie. The way to do that is to make sure that we have enough workers for our industries that currently, need them. 90% of home healthcare workers are immigrants. Service industries, agriculture, landscape businesses. If you try to get home services here in the city of Albuquerque, it's near impossible, or there's very long waits. We simply don't have enough people who are willing to take the jobs. And by the way, this is not about raising a minimum wage. There are very good jobs for $15 an hour or more. We need immigrants. So in that case, I'd like a liberal work visa program to support our businesses. I also think we need immediate immigration reform, and I think a great way to do that would be to implement the merit-based system, which Canada has found effective. People who have technical skills, education, language skills, capital competencies that they can bring to the table, they should be given priority and they should be allowed to make application. And then for anyone else, they should maybe have the option to put down a surety bond, money that they might be giving to someone to illegally smuggle them in here. They can put that as a bond and a deposit as they make application under whatever their circumstances are. And lastly, the war on drugs has not worked, and I'll tell you what it is doing to immigration. It has created an unstable political situation in Latin America, so people are fearing for their lives. What do? Stay home and die, or try to sneak into America illegally? It's an untenable situation, and it's one that we have very much created ourselves. I actually think people like where they're born and often go on to stay. So, a few things we could do.
Please tell us specifically, with concrete examples, what you think can be done to reduce the U.S. deficit.
Concrete example would have been not to have increased a military budget when you are doing it based on borrowing. And at the end of the day, we need to have a balanced budget. Which programs are going to be, reduced is up to Congress and their constituents to figure out. But you can't have, continued pork barrel spending. So you're asking me which program? You could start with the military, but look at the Farm Aid bill. Not that I have a problem with certain things like that, but so much stuff is tossed into it. The problem with our current state of political affairs is that the legislatures get bills that are maybe 10,000 pages long that are physically impossible for them to digest and understand. Why? So everything can be snuck in. Things are big and things are complicated so that things can be hidden. And that's the system that we have supported. Remember, there's no such thing as bad dogs, just bad owners. We own Congress and government. We've made the mistake. So I think that, as we start to look through things, we need to reduce complexity. We need to not SNAP. Why is that in farm bills? I do not know. I think that's under Health and Human Services, not food. Why are we subsidizing corn and ethanol production? Great questions. I would suggest political answers. Politicians are being paid to stay in office. and they do what they need to do politically. It is not based on issues. It is not based on our needs, and it's certainly not based on our consultation with us, the voters.
Thank you. Lastly, you have 2 minutes or less. Please tell the hiring committee why you believe you are the best candidate to represent the people of CD1.
That's easy. Because I'm not beholden to any special interests. Because I have not lived, while my family's been in the state for 40 years, I've only been here for 2 years myself. I've had the privilege and opportunity to live in San Francisco, in Los Angeles, in New York, even a brief time in London. I have traveled and done business in over 50 countries, and I'm not a politician. I'm not with a main party. I was raised a Republican, switched from being a Democrat to a Libertarian, and it was a conscious choice. I did not want to be beholden to a party telling me what to do. I just read that the DNC requires freshman Congress people to spend 4 hours a day making fundraising phone calls. What about their jobs? You know, they're constantly busy raising money, exerting influence and power to do this two-party system. Listen, I don't have a problem with Republicans. My father was one. I was raised it. I don't have a problem with Democrats. My mother was. I was that way too. You know, I have a problem with a political system that is broken. George Washington and John Adams predicted this would happen, and the mess that we're in is just this back and forth. And if the blue wave takes over the House again, oh my God, then the Republicans are going to spend the next 2 years trying to take it back again, and everyone wants to punish the president. When does this stop? I guarantee you it does not stop by electing more of the same. Definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different outcome. You want change, put a third-party voice that is not being bought. I have funded my own race, with the exception of some money from friends and family. November 6th, vote for your third-party candidates. Lloyd, Princeton for Congress, Gary Johnson for Senate. New Mexico will make history, and we will be the fulcrum of power that decides on decisions and gets both sides to start working effectively for we, the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. President.